In this lesson, I'll briefly demonstrate how to use destructuring, which is a fairly new technique in JavaScript for unpacking values from arrays into individual variables, or I guess into other array elements of a different array. But you can also use it to unpack properties from objects, again, into other distinct variables or a different object. So use this term unpack. You'll see what I mean here in just a moment. Let's start by creating a new file called destructuring.js. All right. And the first thing I'm going to do is create a bunch of loose variables here, just A, B, C, D, E. We'll wind up using most of these at some point. And then I'm going to borrow that array that we created a while back. Maybe recognize some of these names. And then next up, let's start by just destructuring this names array into a set of variables. So I'm going to start off by using names, which I know is an array, and I'm going to use this bracket syntax and say, take the first element of the names array and stick it in A. Whoops. There we go. In A. Take the next element, stick it in B, C, D, and I could even change the order. Instead of D and E, I'll go E and then D. All right. And so let's just do console.log A, console.log B, and then console.log D, because that's a little bit more interesting. We'll just go ahead and print out C as well. Why not? And then we'll go E. All right, and so here we'll go node destructuring. All right, so take a look at what happened. We have this array. We destructured it down to a set of individual variables. And we start off with A representing David, the first element of the original array, Eddie, the second element of the original array, Alex, because we're grabbing them off in sequence. I did something a little bit interesting here, and so much that I switched E and D so that E will represent Michael and D will represent Sammy. When I print them out, going back to alphabetical order, D, then E, Sammy's first, then Michael. All right, so, but the key to this example is that I've taken everything inside of an array, and using this style syntax, I've destructured it down to individual variables. All right, so that's just one example. There's some other interesting ways to work with this. Let's just go here. I'm going to take all this, Alt-Shift-A, comment it out. And the next example, I'll do a let others. So I'm adding an additional variable here in addition to the other ones that we created originally. And here I'll go A, B, and then I'm going to use this weird syntax of ... others. All right, equal names. So now console.log A, console.log B, and then let's see what gets put out into others. All right, so this time A is from David, B is Eddie, just like before, but this time I said basically everything else, just go ahead and stick them in a new array called others. All right, so that's what we see here printed out from line 21. We get this array representation in our console.log, including Alex, Michael, and Sammy together. All right. So that's just another twist. We can basically take some elements one by one. We can then also kind of combine together entire groups of elements together. Let's move on to another interesting twist on destructuring. So in this third case, what I want to do is actually work with an object. And so whenever you're working with objects and you're destructuring out of one object into variables or even into another object, it's really like a form of projection if you're coming from other programming languages. Grabbing out the parts that I want of the original object and putting them into a new object with a different shape, all right, without having to take all the contents of the original object. So I may only want 1 or 2 properties where the original has 10 or 20 properties. So here, let's start off with just saying let year and model. Then I'm going to start off with car equals, but I'll get rid of that here pretty soon. We can start out with let car equal, but it won't matter because we're going to remove that. And I'm just going to create a typical old object, like let's say it's BMW. The model will be a 745 Li. The year will be 2010. The value will be $5,000. All right. And in order to destructure this, what I'm going to do is actually remove this and say, hey, I want to take the year and the model and put that into a new object of its own. And then what I'm going to do is wrap this whole thing in a set of parentheses and then an end of line character like so. So now we'll do console.log year. That'll be the value here that I'm pulling out. And model. It'll be that value there that I'm pulling from the original object and printing it out. So let's see what we get. All right, so 2010 from line 34 and the 745 Li from line number 35. All right. So that's just some examples of destructuring. Pretty simple concept. It really is just a compact syntax that helps to clean up code whenever you're trying to map from one data structure into another or into a set of variables. And that's all that it is. All right. So hopefully that made sense. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks.